Now we're up to an array of structs. And I'm sure I mentioned this on Tuesday, an array of structs. All right, let's get started on this one. Nothing new. IOStream, IO manip, and namespace. The struct is going to be really small. I'm going to call the struct pay info. It's only going to have two things in it. It's going to have an integer as far as hours, and it's going to have a double for pay rate. Once we get inside of the main, right, you see this is really, this should look like pretty familiar to you. Constant int num workers. You know that this is good practice when you're dealing with arrays, is to make it a constant int and put it inside the square brackets. Okay, but here's how you declare it, right? You name the struct pay info, right? So there's pay info, but the name of the array is going to be workers, num workers. So num workers is 3. So this is going to be an array of 3. It's going to be a pay info struct. It's going to be named workers. It's kind of the way you got to start thinking of it. All right, I'm going to see out, enter the hours worked by 3. Num workers is 3. 3 employees and their hourly rates. That takes us down to a for loop. Index of 0, we're going to do it for 3 times. So it's going to be index is less than num workers, index plus plus. So it's just a basic for loop. Get the hours worked by an employee. I want to see out hours worked by employee number. And I've just made this index, and the index is 0. So it's going to be indexed by employee number 1. Here's how you enter it. CN workers index, which is going to be 0, hours. So it's really, if you really just give a deep look at this, it's nothing fancy. It is an array. The index is 0, and you're going to enter the hours. Okay, it's the first employee. That's why it's got the +1 here. But you know that the first cell is going to be a 0. All right, that's going to loop. This is going to loop through 3 times. It's also going to say hourly pay rate for employees number 1 and CN workers index pay rate. So you're just going to CN the pay rate into worker 0, right? That's struct. And that's it. You've put in the hours worked and the pay rate into worker 0. It's going to loop around, and it's going to do worker 1. It's going to get dot point hour or dot hours, then dot pay rate. And it's going to loop around again to employee 2, 0, 1, 2, the third one, and it's going to get their hours and pay rate. So your struct is full now. Your array of structs is full now. Now we're going down to the C out. Okay, display each employee's gross pay. Here's the gross pay, and it's just gonna see out what the things that we already knew. You can see there's nothing new to this. I do have the C out fixed, show point, set precision, and it's going to loop through, and it's going to do all three workers, right, in the array of structs. So basically, it's an array. I always called structs buckets. It's an array of buckets of information, right? The buckets are small because there's only 2 pieces of information, and it's going to see these out. Plus, it's going to just go ahead and calculate the gross pay. Gross pay is not part of the struct, but it's going to go ahead and do the math for it. So I'm going to run this. Employee number 1 works 40 hours. Oops. Made it an integer, so it works 40 hours. Hourly pay rate, $13.50. Remember, that's the only two things in the struct is hours and pay rate. Employee number two. Remember, employee number two is employee. It's the second element in the array, but it's going to be the one is going to be inside of the brackets. So pay rate, they only work 36 hours. They went home early one day, but they're a better paid employee. The final employee works 40 hours and they're our highest paid employee. So it takes takes the pay rate in hours of all three employees and just does the math on it. The thing to note here is just how you reference it. It's the name of the array and the index. That's something you've did many times, except remember now it's gonna deal with the hours inside of that struct. Here, same employee, it's going to deal with the pay rate inside of that struct. Then it's just going to loop on through the array and adjust the hours and pay rate for all three employees. I guess the key thing to put in your notes is just how to write this, how to reference it. You can put stuff in like this, you can see it in, you can see it out, but right what I've got in blue is how you have to remember to do it. Also for your notes is to remember, it's a struct. The kind of struct is called a pay info struct. And then the pay info struct, then you declare an array of pay info structs called worker num workers, which is basically 3. All right, take good notes on this because you will be needing this information in the next week.